Now, Comcast has just recently agreed to buy out rival Time Warner Cable for about $45 billion in stock options, making it, if this merger goes through, that would make this merger, the largest cable provider in America. Now, federal regulators are planning to scrutinize the deal to determine if the merger will have too much of an impact on the market share, and if it could stifle, say, content creators and smaller online video companies such as Hulu and Netflix. Which, by the way, Netflix is growing massively. They're up to 31 million subscribers. So Netflix, maybe not so small after all, or at least they're coming. Anyway, according to the Washington Post, quote, this merger could put 33 million cable subscribers in most large cities such as New York, Southern California, Texas, Ohio, and Wisconsin under the umbrella of Comcast that were previously Time Warner cable areas. Now, consumer groups, of course, are worried that this is going to give customers even less options and raise the price of cable and internet services. Matt Wood, policy director at Free Press, says that, quote, Comcast will have an unprecedented market power over consumers and an unprecedented ability to exert its influence over any channels or businesses that want to reach Comcast's customers. Now, another worry for me, specifically, is their ability to lobby Congress. According to the Center for Responsive Politics, Comcast spent over $18 million lobbying Congress just this year. Its executive vice president, David Cohen, who was a well-known Democratic bundler, was actually invited to the recent White House state dinner for French President François Hollande. So it's expected that federal regulators will actually have no problems allowing this merger to go through, given its ties to the Obama administration. I have to mention that Comcast and Time Warner are both rated incredibly low on customer service. Both companies were among the lowest scoring companies in the American Customer Satisfaction Index because their service sucks. And the two companies were near the top of the Consumer's Worst Company in America contest last year, and Comcast took home the title of Worst Company in 2010. Now, what do you guys think about this merger and about this topic overall?
All right, so as the only former Time, well, actually I don't know this, but as a New Yorker and a former Time Warner customer, I say go forth and merge. I will stick with DirecTV. I'm not a fan of Time Warner or Comcast in any way, but I don't think that the government should have any role in approving or disapproving this merger. I remember they stopped Blockbuster from merging with Hollywood Video, and both of those companies, I think, went out of business because they said that that would cause a monopoly. Meanwhile, they were doing so to compete with Netflix, so the government inadvertently gave Netflix a bigger share of a monopoly. So I don't think that the government has any business in this. If they want to merge, like, they're going to get a larger market share. That's fine for them. Like, people have other options, and I suggest you go to those other options because both of these companies are terrible, and bad people work at them.
All right, Jordan, we'll get to you, and then we'll get to Ron, who I assume has a lot to say about this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Ron coming in here and telling me and Sean why we're wrong. I'm actually, much to my dismay, going to kind of agree with Sean here. I think this is a stupid thing. I think it's a bad thing. But unfortunately, what I think is bad, or not the most beneficial setup for the market, is not what dictates the Constitution. To my understanding, Comcast is selling off dropping off some of their customer base.
About 3 million.
Yeah,
in order to have under 30% of market share.
Right. So it looks like they're honoring antitrust laws. Now, I do still think this is going to be terrible. I think you're going to have more customers with more crappy customer service. I kind of come out of a customer service background. For one of Comcast's competitors, actually. Yeah. And the other thing here is, like, I'm sorry if I'm jumping too far ahead in the conversation. Feel free to tell me to stick a pin in this. But one of the big gripes about this is that this will give Comcast the ability to throttle that end of line service. Like the delivery system for the internet up to the premises. So, from the tower to the premises is pretty much unthrottled because it's shared and it's put in by companies and they all share it. But then companies like Comcast and Time Warner, they're the people, or AT&T, or whoever you've got in your area. These are the people who come in and they lay the fiber from the tower to the prim. So like, I'm asking an honest question here. It's a crappy thing to do. I don't like it. But do those companies not have the right then to throttle the exchange of information across the infrastructure that they've built?
Well, I don't think it's a good thing, this merger. First of all, when it comes to internet services, we get poorer quality service and pay more for it than a lot of other places. And we do that because of the near monopolistic practices of broadband services that's going on right now. And having a number one can, merge with a number two, one could only assume that would escalate. One could only assume that would drive prices up, while service and customer service and so forth would get even worse. One of the things Comcast, one of the reasons Comcast does what they do is because they can get away with it, because there is little to no competition. And the other thing here that's going on that's very significant in terms of media policy that we need to remember is that we don't have net neutrality right now. It is, as of right now, it is gone. And I know that might be like stretching a little bit, but I consider these two issues very much linked right now with what's going on, and I have a feeling people at Comcast and Time Warner feel the same way about that. We don't have a free and open internet right now. It is being threatened, to an extent that we have not seen in years. And, the idea of one company having that kind of power. I mean, I saw in an article that Comcast is really trying to make themselves not just, a service provider, but a communications and media juggernaut, and that's exactly what they would be able to do should this go by. And that type of structure is very toxic, just to the idea of a democratic society. And furthermore, I want to go on something. Well, don't they have the right to do that because this is the infrastructure that they built? Well, one thing I would say to that is I would, in terms of the internet, that's something that we built. That's something that our tax dollars built. The internet belongs to we the people in so many ways, and so we should get it. We should have access to it for a fair price, and we should get, as good high speed that we can get given our technology, and it should be free and open because that's the way the platform was meant to be.
All right, Sean. I actually wanted to ask you a question about this because, you're a free market guy, right? And free markets are supposed to have more competition, but the more monopolistic you get, the more that they can shut out their competitors. And especially with this being the executive VP of Comcast being so close to the Obama administration, being so close to the regulators, do you think that that's a bit of a problem? That's a huge issue for when it comes to competition?
I mean, the biggest issue when it comes to competition in internet, cable, and phone, or really internet and cable, is the regional monopolies. If you got rid of the regional monopolies and I could buy internet from another company besides a satellite company, because a lot of people don't, or internet or cable from another company besides a satellite company, then a lot of people would be fine. Like, the prices would come down and we'd have a more competitive marketplace. The problem is for years, Time Warner has this region, Verizon Fios has that region, Comcast has that region. So I think if you want to get rid of monopolies in internet and cable, then you should get rid of regional monopolies in internet and cable and just let all these companies actually compete. A lot of the problems that we're seeing with the crappy service and all that would go away if you did that. I mean, we were talking about this a long time ago, Jeff, that the consistently the shittiest companies rated are the ones that you can't get away from. Like DirecTV always has amazing customer service ratings because you have to actively go out of your way to get DirecTV. Time Warner, it's what you're stuck with, so they're going to be the shittiest. So if you got rid of the regional monopolies, I would be much happier for this like story. I would say like these two shitty companies could go merge. I'll switch to something else, but like that's the only part that bothers me is that they're given a government monopoly.
Mm-hmm. And I want to address Ron talking about net neutrality, because I think that's a really, really important thing to point out, is the fact that we don't have net neutrality, and that can hurt things like Netflix, which is actually shown to be a huge competitor now, gaining 31 million subscribers as people are actually dumping cable TV. I know, I actually dumped my cable package as well in favor of Netflix. So, but when you don't have net neutrality, that these cable companies can now actually throttle your internet usage. They can throttle things like Netflix, and even though they said that they may have said that they won't do that, that's still a major concern.
Yeah, I just want to, like, I always, try to be diligent about acknowledging my presuppositions that I bring to a discussion, and I think that may be one reason why I have a harder time, even though ideologically agree with you guys, I have a harder time having a legal issue with this, is because we don't have that monopoly in Arkansas. In 2010, the website idinsight.com named Arkansas the most competitive broadband internet state in America. There's just a lot of options down here, and they're also some of the lowest cost of internet down here because of that competition. So I haven't had to, like, I don't have that personal investment in it, like if two companies merge down here, I've got 10 other I can go to, the next day. I've worked for two of them over the course of the past year even. But the other thing, though, I would kind of take issue with something that Ron said, and let me promote him with my lower third here. He said, in terms of throttling the internet, like we built that. Man, we built the content. I'll give you that. I think that's a completely valid point. We didn't build that infrastructure. I didn't lay the fiber to my house, man. So like when I was 16, my dad and I built my first pickup truck. But because we built that, didn't mean like I got to set my own speed limit and write my own street signs. These companies built the infrastructure. I think the fact that we built the content, like I want all my content unfettered. I don't want an internet company saying whose content gets to go to the top of the line. I want it all to be equal. But what I want and what are legal aren't necessarily the same thing.
Well, I mean, I don't think that, the internet was built to be a free and open platform. I think that if you take that away, well, you have something entirely different altogether. We had policy in place that basically didn't allow any entity, be it governmental or in the private sector, to monopolize the internet, to give certain websites, better speeds over others, to throttle information, to give priority to services over others. And that's something that we need because that's the way that the medium was built for. Without that, you have a whole different type of medium altogether. You have basically, some people have described it as cable TV 2.0 and stuff like that.
That's an excellent point. I'm sorry to cut you off, Sean. There, were you wanting to jump in?
Yeah, I was gonna say, but the thing is, if you got rid of the regional monopolies and you had like I don't know how many internet companies Jordan has, but like if you had like 12 internet companies instead of one or two, like right now I have two because I switched to DirecTV. But if you had 12 internet companies in your area instead of one, then people would switch from the companies that are slowing down Netflix to the companies that aren't. The problem isn't necessarily net neutrality. It's that we have regional monopolies, and these guys are trying to take advantage of those regional monopolies. So if you got rid of the regional monopolies, like most of the stuff would sort itself out. Nobody's been slowing down their internet yet, and because they're somewhat afraid of the competition. But if you actually allowed a more competitive marketplace, I don't think net neutrality is even an issue.
Well, nobody's done it yet because net neutrality wasn't struck down until just a few days ago. It was struck down in January, I guess a month ago now, by an appeals court. But Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm as optimistic as Sean is. Go figure. I'm not as optimistic about the libertarian, about the free market. I think if the regional monopolies go away, I think what we're seeing here is an attempt at a national pseudo monopoly at the best, if not a flat out monopoly at the worst. But yeah, my understanding though, and I'm sorry, I'm not prepared enough to cite actual cases, but like, back in the day, the government determined that telephone access is something that had to be provided to all people at all time, and that was brought under the auspices of the FCC, and that was regulated, and that they had a chance to do that with the internet and didn't do it. Now you can argue about whether or not that was the right choice, but until that happens, until that is the law, then if the companies that own the infrastructure and paid to build the infrastructure, want to dictate what goes across that infrastructure, I don't know that that's, again, I think it's bad business, and I think Google Fiber is going to come in and wipe them all out, and this is kind of the last breath of a dying industry that's trying to get the most it can because it sees the writing on the wall. But like I say, what I like and what I think should happen and what are legal are two different things, man.
But you can't. The thing is, you can't get Google when Google Fiber comes out. They're gonna have to fight every regional monopoly every step of the way. But the thing that people don't understand is a lot of these internet companies, even though they're competitors, there's also cooperative. Like Netflix's servers are Amazon servers. Amazon is Netflix's competitor with Amazon Prime Instant Video, but their Netflix runs on Amazon servers because they know, like, it's just a more cooperative market. Amazon will gladly take Netflix's money and try and outcompete them in another area. So like the net neutrality is still theoretical until I see Time Warner say you can't use Hulu Plus or you can't use Amazon Instant Video, and until I see the reaction from that, then I'm not like crazy worried about it.
And just to clarify, I mean, I'm not saying that tomorrow your Netflix isn't going to load. I mean, this is something that would I don't think we'd see the effects of for some time. I mean, like Jordan pointed out, this didn't happen until January. What I'm saying is that it does open a floodgate, and I mean, people all too often in our history we kind of shrug our shoulders at media policy, thinking, oh well, it's not gonna do anything bad. It's not gonna, it's not gonna have a drastic effect. It's gonna assure diversity. It's gonna assure competition and this and that. Well, the same thing happened in 1996 with the Telecommunications Act. Look what that did to radio. It was the same verbiage. It was the same concept. And look at what happened. We have a homogenized, near-monopolized system of airwaves now that it did not change in any way for the better. So, when it comes to media policy, I mean, people can say what they want about the free market, and that's fine. There's a point there. But the other side of this is that here in the United States, we strive to be a democratic society. And simply put, a democratic society cannot function if so few have access to the media. So, sometimes like I come at some of these issues not just from a market standpoint or not just from a, an infrastructure standpoint, but also a standpoint of, well, there needs to be certain regulations in place, to ensure, a free and open media, at least better than the structure we have now.
And, well, can I ask an honest question then? Because really, like I'm looking for a way to disprove my own stance. Because, like I said, I don't like my stance. It's my understanding of the law and letting law trump what I want. Could you maybe argue then that if you allow the companies that own the infrastructure to throttle, to cherry pick what media gets priority, could that be a First Amendment issue then? Could you go that stance, Sean, from a legal standpoint?
I mean, that's the argument that for net neutrality is that these companies are quote unquote common carriers. So like you would have different rules that apply to them instead of being private companies. But it's not a free speech issue, or it's not really a free speech issue because it's a private company like censoring stuff or slowing down stuff. But the argument is that they're for net neutrality is that these companies are so regionally monopolized that they're considered common carriers instead of like real private companies.
Gotcha. So there is a whether or not you agree with it, there is a constitutional argument against my point then? Because that's really all I'm looking for. It's like I'm looking for a way for the Constitution to prove me wrong.
There's existing precedent if you classify internet companies the way you classified old radio stations and all that or old TV stations as common carriers. There is some legal framework for that, but the internet is different from those, so I'm not sure if that applies. But that's what the objective is of the net neutrality advocates, to classify them as common carriers.
All right, and speaking of media policy, Ron was making a point earlier. I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think? I mean, how do you think this is going to play out when you have such a connection between the executive VP of this large telecommunications company that is so close to the administration and the president himself? I mean, and the regulators. I mean, are we talking about and of course the giant amount of lobbying money? I mean, how do you think that's going to affect, and what do you just think about the fact that it has so much lobbying power for our government?
In this case, media companies in general, my understanding is they tend to lean more Democratic on their donations than Republican. That doesn't make it any better. I don't care if Democrats are bought off or Republicans are bought off. When your politicians are bought off, that's not democracy, and that's not what America is supposed to be. So yeah, the implications are obvious, man. Whenever you've got these communications companies paying, and actually I think they argue they're not communications, even though it's in their freaking name. That's how they got around the whole how they managed to get the internet out, not under that telephone neutrality kind of law. But anyway, yeah, I mean, money corrupts. Love of money is the root of all evil, man.
Mm-hmm. Ron, what do you think?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'd be surprised if this merger was struck down, by any type of rate. Because I think as long as they don't exceed, that 30%, which they said they're prepared to shed certain subscribers to keep that and so forth. I think if they follow through on that, they're not, ruffling any feathers in the eyes of the law, and I don't see anybody stopping this. And furthermore, I think you're right. We often see politicians cater to corporate interests when there's any loophole available to do that, and it's because of all the lobbying dollars that are accepted.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I don't see anyone standing in their way, I guess is.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to be a done deal.
Yeah, and also what's going to happen is these internet companies like Netflix, Amazon, and like all of these companies are going to become Republican lobbyists, because the Democrats are on the side of big media and Hollywood right now. So like the counter issue is you're going to have all these young founded tech companies supporting their old Republican Party. So that's going to be amusing to watch in the future.
Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, make sure to like and leave a comment below, or even share. Sharing is caring. If you want to see more TYT Nation videos, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for watching.